My name is Randy Noel, and I'm from Laplace, Louisiana. Was born in Baton Rouge at the East Baton Rouge Hospital. My father worked for the Crawford Corporation. He was then transferred to New Orleans and worked for Morgan Ernest. We moved to Harahan, and that's really where I grew up. And then when he developed a piece of property in Laplace, I, with my young bride, moved out to Laplace. She went to work for the education system, so we just stayed and never left. Mama wanted us out of the house real bad when I was 12 and my brother was 10, and we begged Daddy to take us to the jobs. And so he took us one day and gave us a broom, said, clean this house out, about 3,000 square feet. So my brother and I went in, and, you know, we're 12 and 10. We don't know what to do. We're cleaning it. Well, in a minute, here comes some folks we don't know. It's the people he's building the house for. So they helped us clean it up. So he dropped us off, I don't know, 10 o'clock in the morning, came to get us back for lunch at noon, and we were sitting out on the stoop, and he came walking up and said, what are y'all doing? He was really angry because he thought we were goofing off. And he went on in the house and came back. His eyes were as big as saucers. Y'all finished this whole house? And my little brother and I said, And he paid us our $1, I think he gave us. And we went on about our business. And anyway, about 3 weeks later, I think it was, he comes in the house after work and, Randy, Danny, that's my brother's name, come here. And we came and looked at him. Is there something you forgot to tell me? The buyers told him he'd met us and helped clean the house. All that time he thought we'd clean the whole house. That's when I was 12. And then all through growing up, you know, we cleaned up mostly. And then we began to get odd ends. I was a trim carpenter's helper for a while. He had a trim carpenter, it was way too slow. Daddy dropped me in there. So I got a petroleum engineering degree. I was going to go into business. And Dad, I said, don't do that. You can learn that just doing it. Get a real degree, get an engineering degree. And, you know, Louisiana's an old state, and at that point in time, I was tired of working for my dad, and I was ready to go do something else, so I got a petroleum engineering degree. And that was in late 70s. And if you remember, we were in an oil crunch. Okay. People were in line to get gas. Mm-hmm. And I got that degree. In my junior year in college, my dad said, well, I'll tell you what, just to make sure you're going to do what you want to do for the rest of your life, I'm going to co-sign a construction loan for you and put you on this lot, and you can build a house through the summer and see if it's something you want to do. And I said, okay. So he does, and he sells me a lot, one of the lots he's developed. He sold me on the one street that didn't have electricity. He had it all around. So I spent, you know, I went and got a generator and built the house off a generator. Meantime, all the time, talking to the power company trying to get the power down there, which now I'm doing his job, which is, I got the power. Got the house up in 30 days, sold it in another 15 days, $49,900, I'll never forget the price, $49,900, 1977. And put 10 grand in my pocket. And I thought, okay, by the time I'm 30, if I do this many of these, and this, I can retire. I'll be a millionaire. So I interviewed a couple of oil companies, didn't ever get any traction with that. Went to work for my dad. And he did 200 houses a year, 4 models, 2 elevations. We started 3 a week, finished 3 a week. It was a machine. We could produce houses for, I mean, almost no trash. It was as efficient as it could ever be. 1978. 1980. Mortgage rate was 17%. The construction rate was 2 above prime, and prime was 19. The one fallacy with being very efficient and productive with building houses is somebody's got to buy them when you're through. Right. We went 6 months without a start, and we went 6 months without a sale. And all we did for the next 4 years is try to catch up. I scrambled around, got 4 contracts to build houses, convinced the bank to lend me the money to do it. I had those 4 houses up in 3 months and closed, and I had more money in my pocket than I ever had in my life. And they settled the strike. Got through those 4 houses. It was time I had to put something up to let people know I was in business, so we did a parade house. I say, remember, I can produce houses, but if you don't sell them, you're out of business. So NAHB puts out this Institute of Residential Marketing program where you can be a member of the Institute of Residential Marketing. And so I took one look at that and I said, you know what, I'm going to go take that. And I took all the courses that were all over the country. Design, marketing, advertising, selling, crafting your business, you name it. It was the absolute best thing I ever did because I took what I learned, I went home, I got a partner to run the construction for me, and we put it in place in the parade home, and we never stopped selling houses. It was the missing piece of my dad's company. And I, forever will credit the Sales and Marketing Council for that program making me to be as successful as I was. So about 10 years into my business, and I got my feet under me, and my kids are growing up, and we're in solid ground, I said to my partner, all right, one of us has got to go get involved with the Homeowners Association because we're getting our butt handed to us locally, state. The state was ridiculous. The warranties were ridiculous. It was terrible. And he said, no, it ain't my thing. You go do it. So in 1995, I called up Linda Nugent, who was one of my dad's salespeople. She was on the board of directors at the Homebuilders in Greater New Orleans. I said, I think it's time for me to get involved. She says, it's about time. By 2001, I was president. So I guess I ran 97. It's a typical thing. Can't find anybody to run. I'm kind of a young guy. Hey, you want to do this? So I ran. I was local president in 2001. I also got on the Louisiana Home Builder Association's Workers' Compensation Self-Insurance Fund Board of Trustees. And I was also the chairman of my local Chamber of Commerce. So it was kind of busy. And I was also secretary to the State Association in 2001. And then I was state president in 2004. And then I became a state rep for NHB. Got to serve on a couple committees. Got on the executive board, Bobby Rayburn. And then was NAC moderator and on. Well, from the local perspective, that was kind of on my own because I was familiar with those folks. The state perspective, I was at the state meeting, and I was sitting on the side, and they were talking about legislative things, and they brought up something about, this protected historical creek or whatever deal. And I said, and they weren't going to do anything about it. I said, if y'all don't do something about that, you won't be able to build on that anymore because they're going to protect. And the lady, Gretchen Kovacs, she was vice president from Monroe, Louisiana, called on me and had me come to the table. And at the end of the year, she ended up giving me, best member or whatever at the state level. So I could probably say she was a big part of how I got involved at the state. Being on that board of trustees for the Workers' Comp program, you got familiar with the people around the state. So then I was a committee chairman a few times, and then they elected me secretary. And then after that, I got to be a state rep. Now, nationally, Earl Magri, my dad hired him when he worked for Morgan Ernst. And so Earl kind of took a liking to me because of that relationship. But we go to nationally, and it was like, mysterious. How do you get in the inner circle kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of counting on Earl to introduce me to the right people. Bobby Rayburn, I met him, asked him when he was going to run. And my first meeting was in 95. First time I ever been to D.C. in my life, 1995. Matter of fact, I walked holes in my shoes walking around this place. And I was kind of angry at myself from waiting till that late age to come here. So I brought my kids and wife here that next summer, so they couldn't say the same thing. But my first experience with saying anything on the board floor at National, so we had this builder group that was negotiating lowering regulations, FHA, VA, and so on. And they had successfully negotiated that you would no longer have to buy a home warranty insurance program for the houses. And the place, when they announced it at the board, the place leaped to their feet and cheered. A regulation that was peeled back. Success. Next meeting, of course, our good friends at those companies weren't particularly happy about that. They were like reversing it. And I'm a builder. I don't know the inner workings of what's going on. I jumped up for the first time in my life and ran to a mic and just let them have it. I said, "Are you kidding me? Didn't you see these people jumped? We all jumped to our feet to celebrate a win. What are you doing undoing it?" Well, Charlie Roomer had this thing he did that if you complained, you ended up on the task force. So I ended up on the task force on researching home warranties. And then he made me chairman of the Foremost and Termite Task Force. I had to laugh. We had Wes Wyman's, this guy from New Orleans. We were running a resolution to oppose the Department of Agriculture in Louisiana, wanted us to build all out of copper chromated arsenic wood. And we were concerned about the health of our folks. So we were opposing it. So we ran a resolution at NHB to help us oppose it. So they formed a task force and they made me chairman of it. So I know everything you want to know about foremost and termites. As a matter of fact, ultimately gave a speech at a forum that LSU threw for the foremost and termites. And the whole thing died. And it was largely about, I have no idea what this is going to do to my workers. You're asking me to do something, and I don't know what it's going to do to the consumers. And you're trying to ram us down our throat. So anyway, so they pulled back on it. I'd always been kind of code-centric. I mean, the code used to be this thick. Right. I knew that. And the VA, well, it actually started with the VA minimum property standards, which was that thick. There was no codes. It was VA minimum property standards. So we always built the VA when we were building with Dad because of so many specs. And when VA did a certificate of reasonable value, a master CRV, and it was a great program. Mm-hmm. And I went on the inspection. So when a code inspector would tell me I'd done something wrong, I'd go back and get the code book out and make him show it to me. So I spent my life as a Louisiana Home Builder Association director, senior officer, stopping building codes from being adopted statewide and locally. And then Katrina hit. And I was immediate past chairman, I'm a president of Louisiana Home Builder Association, and the then president called me and says, "Will you go with me to this meeting with the lobbyist and me?" And we walked into the, I think it was the Associated Building Contractors office, and the room was packed. And every eye in the place was on us. It was a room full of insurance company people. And Governor Blanco had decided that we needed to adopt a building code, and then the pressure to get money to recover from Katrina was coming from the fact that we didn't have a statewide building code. And they began to attack us. And I said, "Well, wait a minute. We have never been against codes. But they got to be reasonable, and they got to be enforced with people that know what they're doing." So me and a guy that ran the facilities for the state, used to be fire marshal, and a guy from IBHS, believe it or not, sat down and wrote the law. And then I shepherded it through the legislature. And, of course, the rural legislators in the northern part of the state didn't want to have anything to do with it. The southern part of the state, we were not getting mortgages without insurance, and insurance was definitely going away. I mean, insurance had tripled in the affected areas. Well, we successfully did that. I ran that. Actually, was chairman of that code council because I felt such guilt for doing it. And we made it work. And we raised the level of housing, and lowered the insurance rate that offset the cost of that. And that was, I mean, we were dealing with FEMA, we were dealing with HUD, the governor's office. You know, we were doing a lot of national stuff. Mm-hmm. Same time I'm here, I'm the national area chairman and a moderator. And we were in the middle of the recession in 2008, we were there. And what I took via the Adobe Connect webcast thing we use, those 15 or 16 national area chairmen, and we went through 375 products and services that we had on our budget in every budget line item and took out $7 million and took it as the national area chairman. This is the leadership right under the senior officers, and handed it to the then treasurer, which I think was Rick Judson, and the budget committee said, this is what we think you could do. And that experience made me know that we could do work given the opportunity, letting people have their voice, not calling people down for not agreeing with you, and so on. And but the real truth is, in 1995, when I walked in this building, in the housing center, and I walked past the Hall of Fame and saw the past presidents, at that moment in time, I said, I want to do that. I think I can do that. I told Bobby Rayburn when he was chairman what I was thinking about doing. He told me, he said, pick a year, don't back off. I did, because things happen. But this is such a great industry. Matter of fact, when I was back in college interviewing for those jobs with the oil companies, they'd all tell me, you need to go in the home building business. Halliburton offered me a job, but the guy told me, he said, home building is your life. It's all you talk about. And it is. So what a greater thing to do in life than be able to lead the whole organization that does the whole country in that industry. You know, it got to here at National where it's just like everybody just walked in, everybody just kind of arranged everything. Dean Mon announced he was going to run against me in the spring of that year. And it's kind of funny because everybody around me was mad except me. I said, it really just energized me and took my whole level campaigning up a notch. Made us both sharper in what we're doing. So I really like contested elections. And then through it, actually made a good friend in my opponent, Dean Mon. We'd sit outside of boardrooms waiting for them to vote on who they're going to endorse and have drinks and sit down and talk. And but I knew, you know, talk to the members, 900 phone calls to directors. Many who said they've never talked to somebody from NHB before, which is kind of sad when you think about it being directors. Make speeches. So
you admitted that since 1995 you were thinking about leadership. Was it everything that was your year? Everything that you thought?
It was. You know, because I thought about it from '95. I mean, it just was ever present in my mind, and all the things I wanted to do, and you know, I felt like we had some disconnect with our board members and our members, and I had always thought, if I'm there, I'm going to go see them. And there's not any way I knew how gracious and how wonderful these people would be to you when you show up. It was absolutely a blast. My wife retired when I started to run so she could travel with me, and she's had a blast. But and she doesn't just go and do nothing. She goes and does charitable projects with the wives that are in there. So we get to know people we would never have gotten to know. Wonderful, incredible people all across the country. And that was so much more than I thought it was going to be. I think the membership's going in the right direction, and then making the members feel like it's their organization. It's not senior officers. It's not staffs. It's their organization. This has been the greatest 5 years of my life, honest to God. And small, 40 house a year builder, serving 140,000 people. It's just, don't be afraid to do it if you want to do it. Have your business in a good place, because you're not going to be home. If the campaign piece is one thing, you got to have somebody in every state. You got to download all the directors' phone numbers and emails. You got to call them all. If you can't get them on the phone, you got to email them and let them know you called. And you got to nail the speeches. Be reachable, touchable, transparent. You got nothing to hide in this business. You're doing the work for the members. And understanding that it's the members you're working for helps you open up, reach out, take their calls, take their emails, take their texts, and then don't get your feelings hurt when they fuss. And don't be afraid to respond. Because what I found out, most of the time, if they're fussing, they don't know the whole story. And when they get the whole story, first of all, they appreciate somebody answering them. But then they understand. Right. And it turns them into a negative person to a positive person. And so my main goal when I ran was to shift that tide. I think we did that. I think there's more to be done. And then just get the technology up here, present day.